Barbra Streisand. You won't believe what happened next. The world went quiet after the passing of Robert Redford. Quiet in that way only a true legend can leave it. And then, out of that silence, Barbra Streisand spoke. Her words didn't feel like a press note. They felt like a door cracking open on a life most of us only knew in close-ups and movie posters. What she revealed wasn't scandal. It was something rarer. The truth about a man who could charm a camera and still keep the real him hidden just out of frame. Let's rewind. Long before they were screen soulmates in The Way We Were, Barbra Streisand wasn't sold on Robert Redford. At first glance, she thought he looked ordinary. Then she saw him in a role that carried a quiet storm, and something clicked. The ordinary face had a gaze that held secrets. Suddenly, there was only one name she could picture opposite Katie Morosky: Robert Redford as Hubble Gardner. There was just one problem. He said no. To Redford, Hubble felt too thin, a pretty face, orbiting Katie's blazing Sunday. And if there's one thing Robert Redford never wanted to be, it was a prop. That refusal kicked off a tug-of-war behind the scenes. Director Sidney Pollack pushed for rewrites, adding shadows and edges, so Hubble wasn't just the golden boy, he was the man who knew what that cost. Pages were torn up, retyped, reimagined. And finally, the answer changed. Redford signed on, and cinema history exhaled. Now, when the film hit theaters, people didn't just watch Barbra Streisand and Robert Redford, they believed them. Every look, every almost touch, every goodbye felt like a bruise you couldn't stop pressing. The audience thought they were watching a romance. The truth? They were watching two artists who understood longing so well they could make you feel it in a single inhale. Off camera, the story was quieter, sadder, more complicated. Barbra Streisand admired Robert Redford not as an untouchable idol, but as a person who kept a careful distance. He was gracious, charming, funny, when he chose to be. But there was a line you didn't cross. He protected his inner life the way some people protect their families. It wasn't coldness, it was control. He knew what attention could take from you. And yet, that restraint created electricity. You can almost feel it in the famous final scene, Katie smoothing Hubble's hair, a wordless blessing for a love that can't survive its own reality. That's why the movie endures. It's not about fireworks. It's about two people who are perfect for one moment and wrong for the rest, and how both truths can be beautiful. Robert Redford lived like that between light and shadow. He loved the work, but he sidestepped the circus. No need for loud parties or endless spotlights. He'd rather disappear into the mountains and build something that would outlast applause. That something, of course, was the movement around independent film that he championed, a place where new voices could take risks. It wasn't a vanity project. It was a refuge for artists, and maybe also for Redford himself. Talk to the women who worked with him, and you hear a pattern. Jane Fonda once said she'd always had a crush on him, and still hinted that he could be distant, even moody. Meryl Streep remembered how a single tender gesture in a river scene left a permanent mark, proof that he could be open, present, deeply connected, just not all the time, and never on demand. With Robert Redford, intimacy was something you earned, and even then, it was measured. And then there was friendship, the kind that felt elemental. Think of Paul Newman and Robert Redford together, two suns in the same sky, making mischief on set and creating a shorthand few people ever get to have. Their bond wasn't about gossip, it was about trust. When Redford lost him, the grief looked like a man missing his mirror. If you're wondering why he guarded himself so fiercely, look earlier, where the map of a person really gets drawn. Robert Redford knew loss young. He stumbled, got back up, stumbled again. He stretched for art, messed up, learned, kept moving. That kind of path makes you careful. It teaches you how quickly life can change, and how important it is to keep a piece of yourself untouched by the noise. Now, fast forward to those later meetings Barbra Streisand talked about. She didn't describe a marble statue. She described a man older, thinner, still carrying that faraway look. They talked about painting, about the work, about gifts promised, and memories shared. And then, as life does, the conversation ended and wouldn't be continued. What remains is her tribute. Not a tabloid tell-all, not an exposé. A thank you, from one artist to another, for a collaboration that taught the world what bittersweet love looks like. Here's the part people sometimes miss. Robert Redford wasn't just elegance and cheekbones and the clean line of a suit. He was a question. How do you keep your soul when the world wants to rent it out? He answered by owning his choices. By directing stories about ordinary people breaking apart and learning how to breathe again. By creating space for new filmmakers to say something risky and real. By showing, in role after role, that charm without vulnerability is just a pose, and vulnerability without boundaries is just a wound. And Barbra Streisand? She saw both sides. The effortless movie star and the private man. The partner who gave her lightning on screen, and the friend who kept his deepest rooms locked. Maybe that's why her words hit so hard. They don't try to solve the mystery. They honor it. They honor him. So, who was Robert Redford behind the camera? He was the guy who could make you feel seen without letting you see everything. He was warm when it mattered, distant when he needed to be, exacting about the work, protective of the life around it. He carried the parasity, beauty, and the cost of being wanted by millions and known by very few. And somehow, through all that, he kept giving us performances that still glow when you remember them at 2 a.m., when your chest feels tight, and you don't know why. In the end, the legend of Robert Redford isn't just the box office, the awards, or the iconic roles. It's the paradox he embodied so gracefully. A man made of sunlight who understood shadows. And Barbra Streisand's final tribute didn't break a silence. It completed a conversation they'd been having on film for decades. If this story moved you, if you love the kind of deep dive that peeks behind the screen without tearing it down, hit like, drop a comment with your favorite Redford moment, and subscribe for more true cinema stories that linger long after the credits roll. Barbra Streisand. You won't believe what happened next. The world went quiet after the passing of Robert Redford. Quiet in that way only a true legend can leave it.